Hello, Dark Reader, and welcome to the Dark Side of the Library podcast. I'm your host, Katie, and today, unfortunately, Carrie's not with me. We are going to be going through all of the nonfiction books going to be released in February of 2023. This is part 1 of 2. If you are listening to our podcast, come join us over on YouTube. You can actually see my face. Also, if you are just, interested, make sure to check out our podcast, vice versa. If you are on YouTube, you can subscribe, and then you'll be notified anytime we do upload a new podcast episode. Like if you're driving, don't watch videos and drive. All right. We have a lot to break down, so this is going to be 10 books on part 1 and another 10 books on part 2. So strap in, we're going to go through some nonfiction reads. Our first one, we're starting off strong, is the Aleister Crowley Manual, or Crowley, however you want to pronounce that. This is being published February 14th, right in time for Valentine's Day. So this is by Marco Visconti, and this is basically just a no-nonsense breakdown of Aleister Crowley and his ideologies, practices, etc. If this is something that you've always wanted to get into, this might be a great entry book for you because it is no nonsense. It's just very simple. So for example, we have things in here: the nature of the body of light, the pentagram, what that means, hexagram rituals, etc. So those are things that you can look forward to in this read. So that is the Aleister Crowley or Crowley Manual, and this is by Marco Visconti. The next book we have, hopefully I can do this justice. I have never heard of this period of time in history, so this is called An Assassin Utopia, and this is by Susan Wels. This is the true story of a 19th century sex cult and a president's murder. Somehow they are integrated. This comes out February 7th. So we have this place called the Oneida Community, and this was in upstate New York. And this only lasted about 40 years. It was in the 1848 to 1881, not even 40 years. So this community would practice certain things. For example, these things are not normal practices today. So things like younger boys being taught sexual things by older women, just no. Okay, so that's kind of what was going on. There's a lot of freedom, sexual freedoms. People would call this heaven on earth, or the devil's garden is another name for this community. So how does this relate to a president's death? Well, apparently one of the community members may have murdered President Garfield. Had no idea, right? There's only a few presidents who have been assassinated in U.S. history. I didn't even bother to think about why or who did Garfield. Everybody was so obsessed with Lincoln and Kennedy. Who cares about Garfield? Anyway, so the guy who allegedly murdered Garfield, his name is Charles Julius Gateau, or Gateau. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong because it is French and I really need to work on that. He lived in this community, this Oneida community of people who were free and, living the good life. So we get to see what the community itself was like, who Charles was, and how that all relates to President Garfield. It's an interesting read. I hope I did this justice. So if you're interested too, this is called An Assassin in Utopia, and this is by Susan Wels, coming out February. Next up, we have a very frustrating book. It's called Blood Money, the story of life, death, and profit, of course, inside America's blood industry. This is something I never, ever thought about. There's so many things, I am sure, even my water bottle, I am sure there are things that I would hate to know about, but everything boils down to money. This is by Kathleen McLaughlin. So basically what this book is about is that Kathleen was working in this industry, and she unveiled, as all of these whistleblowers do, there is a huge scandal inside of the plasma donating industry. So a lot of people will sell, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies will sell plasma at this insanely high price because, healthcare system in America, because it's basically presented as a cure-all for everything. No anti-wrinkles, COVID-19, so many things. But the problem is that it manipulates and it uses people that need the money the most. So people who are donating they just need a quick cash grab, essentially. So you can get, a couple $100 by donating your plasma, and lots of people do that. Basically get through a week. That includes single mothers, people that have been laid off from their jobs. We even have college kids that are just trying to make a quick buck. So those people only get a certain amount of money by donating so much plasma, and yet the plasma and pharmaceutical companies get an obscene amount of money for selling the plasma and using it. So if you want to learn more about this whole scandal, make sure to check out Blood Money. This is by Kathleen McLaughlin. Speaking of fun little human scandals and people manipulating people, yay social psychology, check out this next book called Comet Madness. How the 1910 return of Halley's Comet almost destroyed civilization. This is by Richard J. Goodrich. So apparently, when there was news of Halley's Comet, people, naturally people were kind of freaking out. I mean, most of us probably lived through Y2K. But it was beyond that. So companies were trying to profit off of fear. There were people that were just generally fear-mongering more than necessary. So we had scientists who were like, Halley's Comet is going to create weather changes and is going to destroy the earth. Then we have Bible thumpers who were like, this is just the coming of Christ, and this is going to be the apocalypse, and the revelation is coming. So I love this because it's an interesting study in history, and fairly recent history, of a period, just things that humans don't understand completely, how we turn these mysterious things into these tools to manipulate each other. So check out Comet Madness if you want to study more on madness. This is by Richard J. Goodrich. Now this next one, I don't think I can give this one justice. I might have to read the publisher notes, so excuse me. So this is called The Curse of the Marquis de Sade. Wait for it. A notorious scoundrel, a mythical manuscript, and the biggest scandal in literary history. This is by Joel Warner. Now, the Marquis de Sade wrote the manuscript 120 Days of Sodom. I'm pretty sure I've actually read it. So that manuscript apparently is pivotal to the biggest, I'm just surprised, of all of the manuscripts, books, anything, how that one is centered to this whole thing. So here's where I'm going to read parts of this because this is all very new to me. So we have a plumber, a son of a plumber. His name is Gerard, and he used his savvy business skills to upend France's renowned rare book market. But the sale opened the door to vendettas by the government, feuds among antiquarian booksellers, manuscript sales derailed by sabotage, a record-breaking lottery jackpot, and allegations of a decade-long billion-euro con, the specifics of which, if true, would make the scroll part of France's largest ever Ponzi scheme. I've never heard of anything like this before, so if you are also interested in this kind of interesting kind of scandal, this is called The Curse of the Marquis de Sade, and this is by Joel Warner. Next on our list today, I have a book that I'm going to place kind of towards the top of my nonfiction TBRs. It's called The Darkness Manifesto. So this is about light pollution, night ecology, and the ancient rhythms that sustain life. This comes out also on Valentine's Day. This is by Johan Eklof, and Elizabeth Denoma is the translator. What this book is explaining is the issues with light pollution. Not only is it an issue because, hey, we don't get to see the stars anymore, but there are so many things like circadian rhythms that are being affected because of our manufactured light. So just like fire was a huge human invention, progressed us forward. We kind of equate the light bulb in the same vein. But there's a lot of issues with the lights, our man-made lights. Birds will, come in, they die, they think there's actual light, sunlight, neon lights everywhere. So it's actually affecting life, but it does affect plants. And maybe if you do grow plants, you do notice this. I've put my plants inside and I've been experimenting with light. It has been so tough because I think I am not getting the right rhythm down, even with my lights for my basil. So I'm struggling here. So this is a really interesting book. We see it with ourselves as well. I'm sure I know I am. I'm super guilty of watching TV before I go to bed, and it is not good for us. We've all been told that, but we don't do anything about it. So our manufactured light is actually somewhat detrimental to bugs, birds, a lot of life out there, plants, everything, and us. So if you're interested in learning more about that, check out the Darkness Manifesto. This is by Johan Eklof. We have 3 more books on our list today, so bear with me. The next one we have is The Everyday Witch's Coven, Rituals and Magic for 2 or More. This came out in January, actually, but we wanted to bring this to you because we forgot. So this is by Deborah Blake. I really love this whole idea. So let me break this down a little bit. A lot of the witchy books that we see tend to be more about your own personal practice. There's not a lot of books that we have presented lately that have been about creating a coven or your own tribe of witches, essentially, and how you can practice together. There's a lot of people that know their own practice, and some people get let's just say, judgmental on other people's practices. Sometimes I feel like it's a no welcome zone. So I like that there's a book out there now with the Everyday Witches Coven that helps us create practices that we can actually do together as a group, because that's kind of also a part of the whole experience. So if you are wanting to learn more about ritual practices, how you can do that with just 2 people or more, you can do it with 100 people if you'd like, creating spell jars, all kinds of stuff, where you want to meet, how to plan certain things, who should bring what. It's kind of fun. Check out the Everyday Witches Coven. It's really, really cool. This is by Deborah Blake. Next up, we have a book that this might be the book that I have to buy immediately. It is called The First Ghosts, Most Ancient of Legacies, and this is by Irving Finkel. This is an anthropological study of ghosts, essentially, or an archaeological study as well, historical study, all of the studies. Ghosts have been a part of our mythos as humans forever, including way back to 3000 BC. There are tablets and engravings that indicate many cultures believing in ghosts. Where does that all stem from? Every culture lived with ghosts a little differently. Everybody has a different explanation of why ghosts are there or how they came to be. Not only do we learn about ghosts, but it also is sharing what it means to be human. And that is a study encompassing, 4,000 plus years of human history. That's pretty spectacular. So if you are also interested in more of an anthropological study, this is called The First Ghosts. This is by Irving Finkel. Now our last book. I feel like all of these nonfiction finds are, for me, it's like Carrie probably made this whole list for myself because I love almost every single book that is coming out this month so far. So we have a part 2 coming up. Remember that. Our last book. It is called I Know Who You Are, How an Amateur DNA Sleuth Unmasked the Golden State Killer and Changed Crime Fighting Forever. So this comes out February 7th. This is by Barbara Rae-Venter. Now, this was a huge deal when this came out. I remember watching the news very carefully. I actually was listening to a bunch of serial killer podcasts at the time. And when this came out, it was crazy big. The Golden State Killer went just totally unchecked for a long time. The Golden State Killer, when he was found, old man. It almost feels terrible, but not, especially if you listen to his creepy phone call tapes. Anyway, so this was a big deal because now, as we are learning more about DNA and the traces left behind, lots of cold cases are being reopened, and people are using this technology to start finding and solving these crimes, which is amazing. It really is. There's so many, especially during the time of the Golden State Killer, there's just so many crimes that were just left unchecked, or people were like, well, I can't figure it out. So anyway, so this book is more about Barbara Rae-Venter, her journey, and what the effects of this DNA data has created. Now we can go through obituaries, we can go through different bloodlines. People are willingly giving their blood to places like 23andMe, and we can trace people's DNA way back and get, finally hone in on, certain cold cases. We can even reveal certain victims that maybe we weren't able to identify. So it's really, really important, and this is a really cool book. So this is called I Know Who You Are. It's by Barbara Rae-Venter. That is part 1 of 2 parts of our nonfiction releases coming out in February of 2023. Make sure to stay tuned Friday for part 2 instead of my mini-sode. If you want to join us on any of our socials, you can find us at Dark Side of the Library on YouTube, Instagram, and our Facebook. You can also find our podcast at darksideofthelibrary.com. Make sure to look at our show notes if there are books on this list that are of interest to you, because I even use it as a catalog and go back and see what books I might have missed. It happens all the time because there's so many cool books coming out. We would also love it if you would spread the word, tell other people about our podcast, tell other people about spooky books, and all of our socials. It would help us out enormously. Rate and review on your favorite listening app, or if you are on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and to comment. Let us know what books you've been reading lately. Thank you so much for listening or watching this episode. We will see you another day.